and Johanna from Travelers Paranormal. So if you've been watching this channel for a while, you know that in October, spooky season, we like to give ourselves different challenges. So for this year, our challenge is to take some of the presentations or talks that we've given in the past, film them, and put them up online so we get one up a week. So this will be our first in the series. And what we're going to talk about is really just the very beginnings of it. The steps to being a paranormal researcher and paranormal investigator. What do we do when we go into an investigation? It's usually one of the first questions that you get from someone if you say that you do paranormal investigations. So it seems like a great place to start. We're going to talk about the three main parts of a paranormal investigation, because it's not just that one night walking around in darkness, bumping into things and asking if anybody's there and would like to talk to you. There's a whole lot more that goes into that. There is research that goes into that. Then there is the actual investigation. And then after that, there is the evidence review. So let's talk a little bit about that. When I say research, what am I talking about? I'm talking about using or applying the scientific method to how we paranormal investigate, right? Scientific method is a process of objectively establishing facts through testing and experimentation. Basically, we have a question, we form a hypothesis, we conduct an experiment, and then we're going to analyze the results. So, what's our question? Well, what happens after death is a good way of phrasing that question. And then obviously, is there anyone here who wants to communicate with me? Am I by myself? Those kind of questions. Research. Many cultures present different accounts to what happens and what steps are taken to prevent a haunting after death. The things that we have that are, lay out, how do you care for the dead? You have some cultures that bury somebody with tools in order to help them in the afterlife. You have some cultures that have very specific time periods about that period of mourning, right? These are things that we will look into to understand, kind of what happens after you die. Those cultures make those rules for a reason. What's our hypothesis? We think that there is some sort of continuing existence after passing away, because we think when we are doing paranormal investigations that we are somehow speaking with the souls, the spirits of people that were once alive.
And on this, our primary field of paranormal investigating is trying to reach out to spirits. If your primary field of investigating is cryptids, then it can be, your hypothesis can be that there is some animal out there that we haven't scientifically documented yet.
Yep.
If you are into UAPs, UFOs, other dimensions, you can still have different hypotheses, apply this method to your own investigations and your own studies.
Our experiment is attempting to engage or validate reports from different locations. So we're going to go to a location that says that it's haunted, and we are going to try and get evidence of that, whether that's audio recordings, video recordings, using different devices that will light up or make sounds or all that kind of stuff to let us know if a location is haunted. And then we're going to have to review those experiments. That's the evidence.
Data analysis.
Data analysis is the evidence review that takes hours. And then we're going to have a conclusion. So was the evidence that we collected good evidence? Does it show that there is something paranormal, something beyond the normal effects of what we experience? And have we done everything we need to do to rule out those normal explanations? And then the final important step to a scientific method is communicating that out, right? We're doing this because we want to find evidence of the paranormal. And if we think we do, then we also want to share that out with others in the field that are kind of doing that same research and putting it out there for peer review. Saying, hey, I think I got this. This is what I've heard. What is your experience in this location? Or can you listen to this audio recording? Are you hearing the same thing that I'm hearing? And being willing to have an open mind when others are also sharing their evidence that they have captured.
And the important thing about this too is that once you've put your evidence out there or someone else has put theirs, you can create further hypotheses based off of what your evidence is, what the peer reviews say, what someone else's evidence is. Someone might capture something at a location that kind of shines what you got in a different light. You wouldn't know that if you didn't communicate to the field larger.
So research. Research is a large part of any investigation, and it's going to take a lot of different forms. I have newspaper subscriptions, right? If we are looking up a location, I can look up past articles that will tell me what happened in that location. Not just that location. What happened in that town? What is the history of that county or that state? We're in the United States, so I've not gotten to investigate internationally yet. But when I do,
yes,
I will research what happened in that country. Anyway, so research is very important, right? I have newspaper subscriptions that I'll go to. I will look up the names of people that lived in that location. I will try and find out about them. What can I learn about them? We will look up the land. What is the geological makeup of the land? Is there limestone? Is there water running? What happened, in that area? And newspapers, we can use genealogical research, and I have a fun video for you of us using microfilm. Raise your hand if you've ever used microfilm. Yeah. In fact, when we went to this location, is the Carnegie Library in Harriman, Tennessee, the librarians were like, we have a microfilm machine, but I don't know if anyone's used it. And we're like, it's okay, we know how to use this. We do this stuff. So here's us watching microfilm.
That also happened at Hartford City.
Yes. So we can use online research to give us a broad knowledge of a general location, the collective history, the people who lived there, what was their time like, what were the world events, what were the global events, what were the local events. Official records like census, marriage, death, birth records, they can be accessed online. We like to use Find a Grave as a good resource, since a lot of locations, a lot of things that we're looking up are people that have already passed, obviously. We can use findagrave.com, look up where are they buried. Sometimes there will be documents saved there. I have found a number of obituaries that way. So that has been a good research tool.
And then, like Jenna said, newspaper subscriptions. A lot of newspapers have been digitized. That's, very appreciated hard work that someone is doing in order to go through them. And those can be accessed online a lot of the times. Sometimes it's through subscriptions, which have a paywall. That can be limiting. But like we said, if you go...
ways around those.
If you go... Legal. So if you go to libraries and stuff, though, they might... If you're part of a school, your school library might have a subscription. If you go to your local library, you might be able to access some of this stuff without needing to hit a paywall because the library might have a subscription. So definitely make sure that you're using all the tools that you have at your disposal.
Going to the local libraries, that microfilm, right? We never would have found that if we didn't go to the local library. So usually if we're doing an investigation and it's an investigation that's not local to us and we need to travel, we might try and get up there, either go there once before the investigation or try and get up there a little bit early so we can spend some time exploring the area and exploring the library. In Hartford City, we went to the library there. In Harriman, we went to the library there to look at what were the records that they had that we'd be able to use.
And we've also gone to Registrar of Deeds offices and such.
It's in the Predators Arena in Nashville. So if you want to slip into the Predators Arena when they are not playing Bridgestone for the people not in Tennessee.
You can't get to the ice.
You can get into the underground secret area of the Bridgestone.
It's a library still.
If you ask to see the Register of Deeds.
It's a library still. I'm not discounting libraries, but it's not. Don't make it sound like it's like the crypt underneath the stadium.
It's a secret area. Secret area of the Bridgestone.
Be polite and professional when you enter these buildings, though, because these are people's jobs, and they may or may not appreciate paranormal sniffing around. Also important, look for those who have gone there before. Interview. You can use YouTube and such to find videos of people who have investigated there before. look for, there's a lot of people who write books and articles about locations that they have gone to. That can be very good information there. And so just, vary your research. Because there are some people who like to go in knowing as little as possible. That's valid too. To a degree. So usually that's people who are sensitive so that they can double check their work and stuff. But we're not sensitive, so we need to
research things. This is a bit from our investigation at Maple Hill Park in Huntsville, Alabama, Maple Hill Cemetery. It's known as the Children's Playground. It is a playground right next to a cemetery. It is surrounded by limestone walls. There are a lot of stories of it being haunted. There was a really bad influenza outbreak in Huntsville in 1918. That's what you're going to hear us talking about in this clip, but you're going to hear me talking about them, having to send away for a doctor. There was research that we put into this to already know a little bit about the area and kind of be ready to have some information if we were trying to have a conversation with someone. So you'll hear a little bit of how our research went into the questions that we were asking, and then you will hear an EVP, electronic voice phenomenon, that we had on the audio recorder. We did not hear it at the time. I don't know how many were killed during that influenza outbreak in 1918, but I do know that at one point notice was sent to Birmingham, I believe, that there was only one doctor and one pharmacist in all of Huntsville who was not ill. So it was a very, very bad event. I don't know how many were killed during that influenza outbreak in 1918, but I do know that at one point notice was sent to Birmingham, I believe, that there was only one doctor and one pharmacist in all of Huntsville who was not ill. So it was a very, very bad event. So that's an example of how research helps us. So what are we talking about when we talk about the field work, the actual investigation, right? First, we're going to have a plan. We want to have a plan whenever we go into any location, but also we need it to be flexible because things can change on the fly. It can be as simple as knowing what experiments will be done or a vague timeline. If we know that we're going to be at this location for 6 hours, how do we want to space out different techniques that we might use? Or it can be very, very involved with us knowing, okay, I'm putting this camera here. I know that at this specific time, I want to be going to do one certain thing. An example of that would be when we went to Eureka Springs to the Crescent Hotel. There is a story of a lady in white who is seen at one of the balconies, and it's usually, I forget what time now, but we knew that at that time we wanted to kind of be outside in the front to try and look for this lady in white that may or may not appear at a certain time. So that was a very specific time that we had. Our most detailed plan that we ever had for an investigation was the Vail Mansion in Independence, Missouri.
We had floor plans that we had written down everywhere we were going to go, what we were going to do.
But this was a public investigation, and I say be flexible because of that. We had to change our plans entirely. We had wanted to put up a lot of different cameras, but with it being, we knew it was a public investigation, but I didn't know how many people were going to be there, and I didn't want to affect other people's experience, so I put up less stationary cameras than I had originally planned on. And then for doing investigations or investigating in different rooms, obviously we had to work around what other people were doing. So kind of that very structured plan fell apart, and there was a lot more on the fly of what we were doing. We didn't let that interfere with our night, though. We were able to be flexible and change. The other thing about having a plan when investigating is don't let what seems like a quiet night interfere with your investigation. If you feel like you're not getting anything, if you're not having interactions, go through with your plan. We had a time where we were at the St. Augustine Lighthouse, and we left thinking, well, at least we got to see a cool location, but I don't really think that we had anything. We did have a disembodied voice, but we didn't know if the recorders picked it up. And then after that, it was kind of just really quiet, didn't really get any interaction on any of our devices. But we got home, we had that disembodied voice, Don't let it change your plans. Go through with it, because you don't know if something doesn't interact in one area, it may interact in another. Just be willing to be flexible.
So next thing is to consider what your base method is, and then you can vary off of that. So for us, our base method is at least one recorder that is recording continuously, a night vision camera, which we run now almost continuously, but before we used to just run it for certain different times. A lot of the times we'll do the Estes method with a recorder, and that was made popular by investigators in Estes Park, Colorado. And that is a experiment where one person is listening to an S box, which is the thing that goes to the radio stations really quickly,
or other
devices like that, and they have a headphones on that are noise canceling. And the reason is so that you don't hear the questioner. So it's a blind experiment because you don't have all of the information as the one listening to it, because the questioner is asking questions that you don't know, and it's just that you can't make your mind try to make sense of the answer. So if they say, "What's your favorite color?" and you hear something that sounds like blue, you don't say, "It must be blue," because that would make sense to it, because it could have been something totally different. A lot of people ask what you need to start investigating. And the honest answer is, yourself and an audio recorder. When we started, we just had an audio recorder. Sometimes we would each carry one so we could compare the audio from the two. But that's really all you need. And then eventually we added in the video camera, and, like I said, yourself. Your senses are going to be some of your best tools. All 5 of them. Who knows?
Speaking of tools and methods, what are some of the different methods that we would use during an investigation? What are the different experiments that we're going to do? So I talked about EVP, electronic voice phenomenon. There is one way of doing that we learned it from Black Wolf Paranormal at an investigation at the Old Stone Jail.
Who are awesome people.
They are awesome. And there are people that have the same thing and they have different names for it. But Black Wolf is just where we first saw it. We were at a public investigation with them. And what they called it, so what we call it, is an EVP 360, where everybody is going to stand in a circle. You're going to ask a question, wait for a while, the next person asks that same question. Usually if it's the first time you're doing it, you're going to introduce yourself, right? As kind of just your opening, right? This is a really good technique to use because of a couple of reasons. One, it's going to allow you to get everybody's name. So if you're there at a public investigation or investigating with a group and maybe you don't know everybody, everyone's going to introduce themselves, so you're going to have their name and the way their voice sounds on the recording, so that when you're listening to other audio recordings, you can recognize, oh, that's John's voice, or oh, that's Debbie's voice, or however the case may be. The point of asking the same question, everyone asking the same question, is that different spirits might interact differently with different people. Maybe you have a spirit who doesn't like talking to men. Maybe you have a spirit who doesn't like talking to women. If you're asking that same question, or old people, or young, or whatever the case may be, but if you're all asking that same question, the spirit might answer one person one way, answer another person differently. You're giving them the different options for who do they want to communicate with. We use a variety of cameras, night vision cameras, because often it is dark. I have a thermal camera that will show me different heat signatures or different temperatures. And then we have an SLS, which is structured light scanning. And this was, what was it? Was it Xbox?
Basically.
It's using like the same technology as Xbox. And it is putting out LiDAR or mapping technology. And then just like your video game system was able to figure out there was a person there, it could map out a person where nobody is. And you can use that to rule out, okay, it's not a lamp, it's not a this, it's not a that. It's picking up something, though, that I can't see. So those are some of the different cameras that we use. We also like to use our S-Box, and Megan's already referenced it a few times. This is the device that is scanning through radio stations very quickly, so that if you are getting a word or a sentence, it's across multiple different radio stations. And in theory, spirits can use that, manipulate it, and give you words and communicate with you. And we've had a lot of success with that. That is probably our main tool. We also use dowsing rods. originally popular to find water and now popular to communicate with spirits. And we use those a lot, and that's the two, you'll see two long sticks like this, you're holding them in front of yourself, and you can do a lot of binary questions. You can ask a spirit to open them up for one answer or cross them for another answer. And the other thing we'll do, especially when in cemeteries, we'll use them for direction. We'll ask a spirit to point them in the direction that they want us to go into. There are also popular blinky beepy things. There's a whole wide range of them. REM pods, EMF detectors, things that are going to notice changes in temperature and everything around them that will either blink or beep or light up or something if that electromagnetic field around them is changing. And then you can also use those to get a base reading. I already referenced the thermal reader too, but you can use those to get a base reading. We were at a hotel room in Vicksburg, and I was using my thermal reader, and all of a sudden I saw a really, really cold spot. I got super excited, and I went to investigate it, and there was a floor grate there that I hadn't noticed because the air hadn't been on earlier. So you can use that to get a base reading, learn the area, what is the average temperature, where are my cold spots when I'm not investigating, how does that change when I am investigating, different things like that. And there are different experiments that we will do on top of the devices that we're using. We often like to say when we are investigating, we don't want to focus on the person's worst day. So, you don't want to go and just be like, oh, so you're dead. How'd you die? How was it? Treat them like you would any other person. Interact with them like you would any other person. So if there's a story that children are haunting a location, we will read a children's story. We'll bring children's books with us. And when it's getting late, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, we might go to the area where people say this is the child's bedroom or this is where the child haunts. And we'll read a children's story, right? Give them that normal interaction that you would have had. We will play music, period-specific music. We did that at the Lizzie Borden house, and we had a really good reaction to that. We might read or recite a poem, give them some kind of entertainment instead of just constantly asking questions. At the Mysterious Monroe House in Hartford City, Indiana, there's a story of two children spirits that haunt that house, but the two children that people think are the kids that were seen in that photo, they grew up, they lived full adult lives, they had children of their own, they had jobs of their own, and so I brought with me pictures of their burial locations, their graves that I got from Find a Grave, to try and understand why are these spirits here. There's a picture of them looking out a window, so why are these spirits here if these children grew up and lived their own lives? I ask open-ended questions. You never know where a conversation is going to lead you, just like you would with another person. And then another experiment that someone could do is using trigger objects. Toys for children. Music can almost become a trigger object at times. We were playing like old country music in Bobby Mackey's. We were using that as a trigger object to see if we can get the spirits to react to something. Oh, Jesus. The Blackford County Jail had a past law enforcement officer.
Are you going to the newspaper article?
That did bad things and was caught by and held in the Blackford County Jail. And Megan read an article detailing the whole investigation and how he was caught and all of that kind of stuff. And while she was reading it, she started feeling like she was being choked. So I think he didn't like that. But that was definitely a good trigger object.
It was.
Not for you, though, in the moment. She was fine. She's still here.
Explore the area, too. It gets referred to as paranormal tourism. But locations that bring in people to investigate them, whether it's something like Harriman Hospital or Old South Pittsburgh in Tennessee, whether it's the Monroe House or the Blackford County Jail in Hartford City, wherever it is. We were just in Butte, Montana, and they have a couple of buildings that are potentially haunted that are doing investigations in them. So make sure that when you go places, you explore the local area. You can get a feel for what the area is like. Also, sometimes these locations are, they're part of the economy of the area too. And so you want to make sure that you explore that area, support local businesses. and you never know what you're going to find. So for instance, when we were in Hartford City, we were there for a couple of days, and so we went to a coffee shop to get coffee, and we were sitting down at Common Grounds Coffee Shop, I believe it was, in Hartford City, and we just happened to look at the bookshelf next to us, and it had the yearbooks from the high school. And so we were able to further our research too and go through those yearbooks and learn some more just about the area. And we ended up finding some information kind of about one of the people who lived in the Monroe house as we were continuing our investigation.
We found his yearbook and his high school picture of one of the people that lived in the house.
You know, there's, when we were investigating a house, the Brooks Estate in Missouri, we wanted to get a sense of the land and the history of it. And so we went and explored some of the preserved Indian mounds. And then you can learn about, you know, like I said, the culture and the history of that land. And when we were in Nashville City Cemetery, you know, again, exploring that area and stuff. It's not right at the Tennessee State Prison, which was featured in the Green Mile, but it has a connection there because inmates from that prison were buried in the original city cemetery. And so there are some stones there that are very different if you ever go, and they are marking out the prisoners who passed away in 1833. 19 prisoners who passed away in 1833 of cholera, and they're buried there, and they have these stones marking them out. And so that gives that cemetery too a connection to the prison. And so the whole of the area, you know, can be somewhere where you can learn more about whatever your investigation is.
Don't limit yourself just to that specific location. There may be other places around town, so to say, that could have a connection. The other thing you can do is conduct interviews. At the Monroe house, we spoke to the owner, Eddie, talked to him about his experiences in the house. At the Lotes house, Thomas, I can't think of Thomas's last name, but he's a historian that is amazing in his knowledge. He
sometimes does history classes at one of the local
He has forgotten more about the Civil War than I will ever know in my lifetime. He is so much knowledge, and getting to talk to him and saying, hey, this is what we were getting in our investigation, does this make sense? And having him actually be like, yes, there were troops from that state that were here and they were at these other battles. So conduct interviews. For the house in Hartford City, I actually got to speak to a paranormal author, Richard Estep, about the history that I had looked up. They are there on dark ground. About the history that I had looked up about that house, the history that I had traced, and I was able to talk to him, and he credited me like on a page in his book. I'm mentioned in a small part, but he was looking for people that had been to the house or had information about the house, and so I reached out and said, hey, I did this research. Would this be helpful? Is this good? And that's been an amazing connection to have.
And also important is don't make assumptions when you're doing your investigation. For instance, we were in Hannibal, Missouri, and we were investigating, and just because of where we were trying to ask questions about the Civil War of the spirit that we were investigating and speaking to, and eventually they made it clear that they didn't know what we were talking about. It was a spirit that seems from the conversation to have actually been older than the Civil War. But had we kept being focused on Civil War and such, we would have lost out on the rest of that conversation. By the same token, we were at a different location and we were speaking to a spirit that identified themselves as Sam. And as we kept on talking to them, eventually someone else came in. And when it was clear that we were talking to this spirit, they thought it was someone else who is known to haunt that location. And so the person who came in started addressing whomever we were speaking to as this other spirit. And whomever we were speaking to kind of seemed to step back and such. And so that was because the person that came in was very focused on the known haunting and very excited, and I can understand it, very excited to think that they were speaking to this other spirit that they had read about. But because of their focus on that other spirit, we might have lost a little bit of the connection that we were having with seemingly someone else named Sam. So don't make assumptions. Just part of that is be open to what you might be experiencing in the moment. And I know we said, do all this research. But again, like Johanna said, make your plan, but don't be too hard stuck by it because plans are going to change.
The evidence review process is long, it is tedious. This, you're going to see an example of a very sped up video.
I know you can see it now. And does it haunt you? And is this the way things are? And I can see no more than you, but I recognize the truth.
Since we're always carrying at least one continuous recorder, we usually start by listening to that and creating a transcript. We then will listen to other recorders, watch video that we have. And when we first started, we only had the audio recorders. We've added different tools as we've been going. But it gives us a full document, full transcript of the investigation that we can go back to and cross-reference if we need to. This is just our process. It doesn't have to be everybody's process. But at the bare minimum, like listening back to the audio or watching back on the videos, I'm not saying everyone has to create a transcript, but that will be, you may find something like the disembodied voice in St. Augustine, the fact that we actually had that on the recording and had us reacting to it. Or an EVP, electronic voice phenomenon. You have no idea, like you heard from Maple Hill Cemetery, where we're talking about the outbreak and we have a spirit say they didn't help me. If you don't listen back to that audio recording, you will never know what you had there. It's also important to keep a level of skepticism when you're doing your evidence review. There are often times where we might have to play an audio recording several times, be like, do I have something? What do you hear? What do I hear? And we might discredit it, or not discredit it, but not consider it good evidence if we can't come to an agreement on that. So you wanna be critical, or I guess listen back and watch with a critical ear and eye to what you're doing.
And like I mentioned, we will carry 2 different recorders. Each of us will carry a recorder sometimes now, and we can cross-reference. And there's been times where like a voice might have been faintly picked up, sound like it might have been an EVP on one of the recorders, but when we listen to the other one, we hear that there was someone else around. So you got to keep that in mind too,
yep,
of who might be around you, and if they might, I don't want to say contaminate, but if they might give a false positive. And so again, thinking critically will help to avoid that.
But
I cannot say how exciting the moment is when you get to be like, hey Joe, come here, take a look at this. It's not subtle, I think we got something. And that all of the review and the investigation and going through and researching and stuff, it all becomes worth it when that happens. And an example of that is we were at Lolo's house in Franklin, and we were before the investigation. I was going around and taking photos, really just to document the scene, basically document where everything was. And I was taking 3 or 4 photos at a time. And the reason I do that is if something moves and there was no one there and those photos are all taken at the same time, then that does document something. And we've had some shadows that we caught at Waverly Hills in that same function. But anyway, so I'm by myself and we have audio recorder with us, by myself, and taking photos in the red room of the Lotz house. And photo 1, photo 2, I believe it's 4 photos in this session. So 1, 2, 3, you see me in a mirror, and then there's another mirror that is empty. And then the last mirror, when I pulled up that picture, there is a figure in the mirror. And we're gonna play that video of that of that process and of my recorder and stuff for that. But like, again, I can't say how exciting it is when you get to have that moment of like, come here, you gotta take a look at this. So
while looking through photos from our overnight investigation at the Lotz house, Megan noticed something in the mirror on the right side. What you're going to see is a series of 4 photos that Megan took. I'd like to point out in the upper right hand side, you can see that the photos were taken for 3.2 seconds. You'll see the time and date that they are all taken at a similar time, and some other information. She's using her fisheye lens, so not all the information is filled out. Just watch that mirror on the right side. In that mirror, we have a figure appear in that last fourth photo. Now, on the very far right, in another mirror, you can see Megan's reflection. She's wearing a green mask at this point, and that figure does not look like her, but it does look like a Union soldier. Take the time. As I said, it is long and tedious, but it is worth it. Second, be bold enough to submit your findings for peer review. Build up a network around you of people that are interested in the field, and not just people who are like-minded, but keep your people varied. Be open to feedback received, and thank people for that if they're going to take the time to look at your work. We may have an audio recording that we think is fantastic, and someone says, oh no, it was this swinging door. You know what? They helped you out, so there's nothing to feel bad about that. Thank them for helping you. It's not attacking or anything like that, but it is building up a better body of work. Third, when you're reviewing someone else's evidence, same thing. Review it in good faith. If you're offering constructive criticism, be honest in your assessment. You're not looking to take somebody down or ruin what they think they have. You want to make sure that you're being honest and helpful in what you're doing. And fourth, take criticism seriously, but know that at some point enough is enough. Remain professional in your interactions, but there are some people who are going to ignore step 3 of honesty, and there are some people for whom evidence will never be enough, because we can be as scientific as we want, but in the long run, most evidence is subjective. The picture from before can be faked. We know how to fake it. We know how we could do it. And people have accused us of faking it. But I know that we didn't. And I know that we have, thanks to Megan carrying an audio recorder at the time, we have the camera sound, and you can hear that there's nobody with her. You can hear that there's nobody walking through, anything like that. And I say that because I had an instance where I had shared the final closed-in photo, and someone said, well, that's really zoomed in. Can you share the full photo? And I shared a screenshot of the full photo. And they said, but, that's just one photo. So then I shared the whole line of all 4 photos, and they said, well, how do we know someone wasn't there? And that's when I put together the audio recording and all the photos, so you see the photos as the camera is clicking. And they said, well, that's not, how do I know that that's real? I want to see the actual, I don't even know what they're asking for from I don't even know what they're asking for, the original file or whatever. And I was like, no, I mean, I've sent you enough. That's kind of all that I've got. They weren't ever going to believe that photo. And we are very sad with that photo in some ways, because we have collected the best piece of evidence that we are ever going to. That doesn't happen. That doesn't happen. But that's it. So anyway, as I said, build up a network around you of people who are working diligently and honestly in the field, of people thinking critically. Celebrate everybody's success and offer assistance or support when it's needed. And together we can continue making advances, because working in the paranormal is a team effort. Competition happens at the bottom. Collaboration happens at the top. We want good evidence. We want a good body of work, and we want to lift those with us up with us, not rip them down.
That's it.
And that is our presentation on paranormal investigating. Thank you for watching.
Thank you for watching.